All right, everybody, welcome aboard to the Thursday edition of Locked On Avalanche, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And on today's episode, really two things to get to. We have an Andre Burakovsky grade that Kyle and I have to bestow upon everybody, along with Twitter and Instagram getting in on the act, see what they give him for a season grade. And next season schedule has been released. And like every schedule, some interesting games there for the rest of this year in October, November, December, and then obviously turning the calendar. We're back to a regular NHL season, and we don't have that break that we thought we were going to have with the Olympics. That's gone, obviously. So some interesting stuff for this next season, and Kyle and I are going to get to that right now.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Just feels like we didn't get a lot of time to celebrate this Stanley Cup victory because we are jumping into things. You got the draft tonight. You have free agency next week, and we already got our schedule out for next year. So things are happening quick, but it doesn't take away that the Avalanche, despite all of that, are Stanley Cup champions, which we will be singing that from the rooftops until next season starts and through next season. We will discuss that schedule and, like I said, get to Andre Burakovsky's grade a little bit later. But first things first, thank you for making this your first listen of the day. And follow us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram. Questions, comments, concerns, opinions, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. And follow us on our YouTube channel over on the YouTube. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live. All right, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, we have our schedule. And, we were talking yesterday about who we thought or who we would hope the Avalanche would open up against. You know that they're going to raise the banner opening night. And we got that answer, and it's Chicago. And if I'm not mistaken, they opened up against Chicago last year. That's correct? So 2 years in a row, opening up against Chicago. Is this turning into like? I know you're not like the Broncos fan, but Denver Broncos always just seem to open up against the Oakland Raiders. It just seems like the NHL the NFL like throws them on the second Monday night game, and it's just Oakland or not Oakland anymore. Sorry, Vegas, the Vegas Raiders. Is this becoming a trend now that we're always just going to open up the season against Chicago? I was kind of hoping for maybe something like a little bit more meat on the bone for who the opponent was going to be. Maybe just Detroit because it's Detroit. Like I said, maybe Vegas, or maybe like your big rival in the division in Minnesota, something like that. Nothing against Chicago, but I was hoping for a little bit something more.
Yeah, and like last year, there was a lot of hype with the Chicago team. Like there was outside talk like this is a cup favorite team, and boy, was that silly. But
I don't know if I would go that far with them. But
well, yeah, there was a lot of like this team is built like they had Flower as goalie at the time. You hear that, Flower fans. But yeah, what a weird start, Chicago. You would want it to be a marquee matchup, but I guess they can't do 20 like all those marquee matchups for everybody, but sure would have been nice to have somebody a little different. I would have taken Seattle.
Would really?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Seattle doesn't deserve that yet. Seattle doesn't deserve to watch our banner go into the rafters. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, poor Donskoy.
Oh, that'd be bad.
Oh.
Yeah. But kind of getting into this schedule and start like kind of right off the top, the thing that jumps out at me in October, you have 3 back-to-backs, 3 groups. So you have, there's 6 games there that are back-to-backs, and you're not playing a lot of games in October. So that stood out to me. And the fact that you only have 3 home games the entire month of October. That opening game against the Blackhawks, which is followed up the very next day in Calgary.
Yeah.
You have a home game against Winnipeg, and then you have a home game against Seattle. Everything else is on the road, and you get an East Coast trip in the third week, or actually, the third week of the season, the fourth week of October. You're like immediately going right out to the East Coast. So a little bit of a challenge here for the Avalanche. I mean, your opponents You got the Blackhawks, the Flames, the Wild, the Jets, the Kraken, Vegas, and then on the East Coast, you got Rangers, Devils, Islanders. So it's going to be a challenge in that you're immediately going on the road to the East Coast. And the teams, say for Seattle, who could be improved, we don't know what's going to happen in the free agency market. You're playing some pretty decent teams here. So I think the Avs are going to be challenged right off the bat.
Yeah, I've been trying to jog my mind. Like, when's the last time you've opened the season with a back-to-back? Like, that's just weird.
I know.
And then you open the season on a back-to-back, and then you have like 3 or 4 days before you play Minnesota again, like on the road. Like it's a very weird start to the season. It'd be interesting to see how this team performs. Adrenaline will carry you through game 1, skill will carry you through game 2. You hope to walk out 2-0, but what a weird start to the year. And then immediately going to another back-to-back the next week, and then East Coast swings. So you're getting tested right out of the gate, and the schedule doesn't get any easier. So you're going to expect a lot more of this just weird scheduling all the way through the season.
And I don't want to say notoriously the Avalanche start slow, but we have seen them do that recently.
We have.
We'll see if it's a little bit different, because they are defending champions. If they know that they're going to have to come out swinging because they're going to get the other team's best every single night. Not that you shouldn't on any given night. But I think it might be a little bit different for the Avs, but maybe they do come out a little bit slow because that's just the nature of a hockey season. Now, this offseason isn't as long, so there's not that big of a layoff where they would have a couple extra months before their season started to really get them going. But, you have that East Coast trip. You're playing the Rangers, you have 2 days off, and then you have a back-to-back on the road, Devils and Islanders. And then you follow that up, you get a solid 5 days off because you're traveling to Finland right at the beginning of November. So not only do you have that three game road trip, it's continued on crossing the ocean.
That's quite a road trip.
That is a big road trip. So you're playing those 2 games, which again, by the way, is a back-to-back.
Yeah.
I always love seeing how, one of those teams is the home team for a game in Finland. And then the next day, the other team is the home team in Finland. I get a kick out of that. But you're playing the Columbus Blue Jackets twice over there. I think a lot of people are going to be looking forward to that. Those are always fun games to watch. So that starts off your November. And then you look at the games in November and you pointed out, before we're going on air, Black Friday. A noon start time, noon mountain start time. So I mean, I'm not a Black Friday shopper, but if I was, I'd go out and knowing that, hey, I'll get all my shopping done and then come home and have a hockey game to watch at noon. That's not the worst thing in the world, I guess.
No, not at all. And
which is against Nashville, by the way, in Nashville.
And I think that would be a good thing for the NHL to start doing a little bit more is take advantage of these like little holidays. Like who sits there and capitalizes on that gap in Black Friday for television? Like, let this be their little place to get a foothold and be like, this will be a good matchup, especially with they played each other in the playoffs last year. I'll sit down and see what this team looks like this year. Like, take advantage of Black Friday. Like,
and we had talked about this a while ago about kind of changing up and scheduling, like changing up start times and things like that. I would have loved to have seen a Stanley Cup final game start at 1 or 2 in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the East Coast. So like 1 o'clock Mountain Time.
Yes.
Why not have an afternoon game on the weekend? And, I think they started doing that in baseball. I think a World Series game is played in the afternoon now. You know what I mean? Like, and you always get football games that are the playoff games are always in the afternoon. I know the Super Bowl is different, but that's a one-off. I'm talking for a 7-game series. Start doing that. Start having like some of these day games on the weekends more. I know they do it sometimes, like for the nationally televised game that was always on NBC. Sometimes that'd be a 1 o'clock start time, a 3 o'clock start time. But just start doing it for more teams. Don't just have the one game that's for an afternoon game. I think it just open it up more for a lot of people to be able to watch these games and not just have to wait till nighttime to watch these games.
And a lot of these, you're opening up to fan bases that don't typically get to watch your team. Like if they're on the East Coast, like hey, finally I get to catch an Avalanche game and not have to worry about work the next day.
Yep.
Like I want to sit down and give this a shot. This is one of those games.
Yeah. In November, you get both your games against Carolina out of the way. So you play them early. Let's see, what's that? The 12th in Carolina, and then the very next week on Thursday the 17th, you're playing them. No, I'm sorry, reverse that. The 12th, you're playing them at home, and then the next week on the 17th, you're playing them in Carolina. So, there's always the people who want to like throw out like what the Stanley Cup final could be next year or at the beginning of a season. I think there's going to be a lot of people maybe throwing out that matchup, saying it's, it could be Carolina and Colorado in the Stanley Cup final. And if that happens, fast forward even farther into the postseason next year, you're not really going to know like what those teams did against each other because this is so early in the season that it's over with. You know what I mean? Like you're playing your two games against those teams are done within a week of each other. I know that's a fluky thing, but you like to see them spaced out a little bit more.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the positioning of Florida last year. Like how we got those matchups kind of earlier in the season, like really before the deadline. Like it's nice that you get them early. You get to kind of hopefully take advantage of them before they can make a trade deadline adjustment. But if it does become a foe you have to face later on, kind of at a disadvantage when it comes to scheming.
Yeah. And you have a lot of division games in November, 2 against Nashville, 2 against Dallas, 1 against St. Louis, 1 against Winnipeg. So obviously you're going to play those teams a lot, but you have a good amount of them in November. Into December, just the visual, if you're just looking at the visual of December,
it's neat. It's clean.
It's clean, but it's full. Yeah. that happened last year, man. November was not I think the Avs played 11 games in November and then played like 19 in December. It was just from one extreme to the next, and that's kind of similar to what's happening here. You're playing a lot of games in December. You're basically playing every other day. You have one break around Christmas time. You have Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and then the day after Christmas. Those are your 3 days in a row off. Everything else is every other day. You're playing a lot of games in December again.
And looking at it, it's just you start out so East heavy. Like
you're on the East,
you get Buffalo right out of the gate, and then it's Boston, Philly, Boston, Rangers. Like that's a grind. That East Coast style is just
a couple of those are at home. And again, with Boston, there's your 2 games against Boston.
Yep.
Almost you have Philly in between those 2 games. You're playing the Rangers. So you played the Rangers late October. Now you're playing them early December. You got a Maple Leafs game in there at home. That's New Year's Eve. Who else? You got 2 more games against Nashville. You got a Canadiens game at home. So you're kind of all over the place. It seems like you're touching almost every single division in the month of December.
And you get the other half of that Rangers matchup, another team that might be a finals opponent before the trade deadline. So, and you're going to be knocking out Philly. You play them, you get your games there against Philly.
Yeah.
So
it's just you're getting, so the Hurricanes, that whole season series is done in a week, less than a week. The Boston Bruins, that whole series is done in less than a week. The Philadelphia Flyers, that's just over a week. That's 8 days that season series is over. I'm not a scheduler. I don't know if there's a reason behind this. I don't know. I'm just, if it's possible, just to spread those out a little bit more.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit more. Even Buffalo. That's 2 weeks you're done. That's in December, but your Buffalo season series is done in the month of December. I don't know. I know this happens, but it just seems like they're all done within a short amount of time. So
and it's just like home, away. Like there's really no consistency, and it's all over the place. December's going to be rough, so prepare for it now.
Yeah. So before we turn the calendar to look at January through the rest of the year into 2023, We're going to hear from Built Bar, and as well, we have our Andre Burakovsky grade to get to. But first, Built Bar. And from the people who invented healthy and tasty comes the latest and greatest gift for your taste buds. You've probably tried the amazing coconut brownie chunk. If you haven't, that is my maybe absolute favorite. A couple years ago when they did their like NCAA bracket, that's the one that I had going all the way, and that one did win based on voting. That one is delicious. If you like mounds bars, get that thing. It's fantastic. But if you are the puff fan, they have just come out with coconut brownie chunk puff version. Can you contain your excitement, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom?
I honestly don't know if I can. Built Bar keeps rolling out with these puffs, and they keep blowing me away. Like, you think you're going to finally get one, you're like, oh, this is okay. They haven't done one yet.
No. Yeah. And the coconut brownie chunk Built Bar flavor that you love is now available in delicious, chewy, marshmallowy protein bar covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. I mean, even me not being the marshmallow fan, I think I would want to tear into one of these things.
I would sleep on one if I could, but then I'd wake up with chocolate on my face.
Go to built.com right now. Use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off of your order. Once again, that promo code is LOCKED15 at built.com to try the all-new coconut brownie chunk puff bar. All right, let's head into the new year, sir. We've made our resolutions that the
2023
never lose again. And we start off in January. Your first game in the new year is at home against the Vegas Golden Knights. So what a way to start the new year against them. And then you go on the road. There's a little bit more space in January and February where you're playing another back-to-back a little bit later in the month against Vancouver and then in Seattle. So that's a back-to-back on the road. That kind of stinks, but
it's again, a lot of blue and green.
Yes, a lot. So you're playing Ottawa for the first time. You're playing Edmonton for the first time. You are playing the Ducks for the first time. You have your second game against Calgary, your first game against the Florida Panthers. That's at home. Your first game against Detroit, which is at home. So a lot of teams that you're going to be seeing for the first time is not till the new year in January. So.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think that Detroit game is a Martin Luther King game because that's a 1:00 start on the 16th.
It is. You're right. Yep.
So you get you a nice early game for MLK Day.
Yep.
Against the rival. So it's a good game.
Yeah, really good. Yeah. So you have a good kind of like smattering of games here. Nothing too crazy. You have some good breaks. A 2-day. Let's see. You have 1, 2,
an afternoon tilt with the Blues as well.
Yeah, 1:00 game. So that's probably a nationally televised game. I'd venture to guess that. So could be a month, a good month because you do have some rest there. And at the end of the month is where you get your bye week. So the end of January into the last 3 days of January into the first 4 days of February is your bye week plus because you have 2 extra days technically because you don't play until Tuesday. And when you come off of that bye week, you're going to the East Coast again to play Pitt, a day off, and then in Tampa, and then a day off, and then in Florida. That's going to be a fun mini road trip right there.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what the Tampa Bay Lightning look like in February of 2023. Like, they no longer have the crown. What does this team look like after free agency? What do they do going forward? That'd be a very interesting matchup come February.
Yeah.
That'd be one I'd circle just to see how far will you come.
Right. Because that's the first time you're going to play them. So it's in Tampa, and then you, true to form for this schedule, apparently, the very next week you're playing them again, in Denver. So you're going to see them twice within 5-6 days of each other. Where was the other one here? And you have a back-to-back in Winnipeg, and then at home against Calgary. You have a back-to-back the week before that. A noon game noon Mountain Time game against St. Louis. Again. So in January, you have a 1 o'clock start time. In February, you have a 12 o'clock start time. And then you follow that up the very next day at home against Edmonton at 1 o'clock. So some afternoon, that's an afternoon delight weekend for Avs fans. You know, like 12 o'clock afternoon against St. Louis the next day, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, all right, I can get down with that.
Yeah, it's growing up, for some reason, growing up watching afternoon hockey games like in the 90s and 2000s, there's this just something about those games that just hit and resonate with you. And I'm looking forward to these games coming up.
We move our way into March, and the thing that just sticks out to me in March is that Sunday, March 18th, you're playing in Detroit. It's 11 o'clock in the morning, Mountain Time start time.
Is it Kid Rock's birthday?
I don't know. Like, I mean, that's a day after St. Patrick's Day, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there another reason? If there is, somebody please say in the comments why that would be an 11 o'clock start time. Is that just something that Detroit does and we just happen to play? I don't know. Where they play the day after St. Patrick's Day early? You know, we're Avs fans. I don't follow what Detroit does on the day after St. Patrick's Day.
I try not to.
Yeah. So Eric Johnson has got to stay away from the booze because it's an early start time.
And if you go like just 2 days ahead, that's a Canadian back-to-back, Toronto and Ottawa, 1 day off, and then 11 o'clock in the morning in Detroit.
Wow. Yeah, you're on the road that entire week. So that game, that 11 o'clock game, like I said, is in Detroit on Saturday. You back up to Monday. You're in Montreal. You're in Toronto. You're in Ottawa. So you are north of the border, and then you cross it to come back into Detroit. Wow. That's going to be fun. What else is going on in March? Not a heck of a lot, but you see Minnesota. You see Minnesota. You see Arizona 3 times. 3 times in the month of March, twice at home.
The dreaded rival of the Stanley Cup champion, Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah. You see San Jose for the first time in March at home. You got a Devils game, another Seattle game. So not a bad month. You have like some nice breaks in there, but yeah, that four game road trip, 3 of which are north of the border. That could be, even though you're playing Montreal and Ottawa should be a little bit improved.
Yeah.
It's not the best thing that you want at that point in the season.
No, that's a terrible road trip, and the one that you're going to dread. Thankfully, you play Arizona to leave and Chicago coming back, but not fun.
Tough. And then the few games in April, you do end the season at home. I always like doing that. I just like having the last game of the year at home. So you start the season at home against Chicago. You end the season at home against Winnipeg. Actually, your last 2 games are at home. 2 days before the Winnipeg game, you were at home against Edmonton. And then a very interesting thing, on the 4th and on the 6th, you have a day off in between, but you're playing the Sharks both of those games. You don't see that a lot.
Yeah,
that's a little interesting.
That is a weird. It's same start time and everything. You play in San Jose, have the day off, play in San Jose again.
Yeah,
very weird.
So you have another 4-game road trip for the Avs. That's a California one because you have San Jose day off, San Jose day off, Kings, and then the next day the Ducks. So that's how you end the season right there, and then you come back for those 2 home games at Edmonton and Winnipeg. So interesting.
And you hope with those teams that you just listed, like this is late April, almost the end of the season, you hope those San Jose, Anaheim, LA, you hope their season is done by the point that you get there, where there's not a lot of fighting in them, so you could just kind of get through it and get home.
We always look at that. You always look at the end of the season and you kind of say like, okay, if we're in a dogfight for either a playoff spot or positioning in the playoffs, all right, who are you up against? Or the other side of that is the teams you're going up against. What's their standing?
Yeah, what are they playing for?
And Winnipeg could be interesting Winnipeg could be playing for a lot that last game of the season. Edmonton, you would think would have something wrapped up by then, but I think for Winnipeg, that could be a very, very big game for them, and it could be for the Avs. We would expect them to be, in the driver's seat for a playoff spot, but could those last couple points be big for them in terms of positioning?
Yeah.
And they're going to play as hard as they possibly can against Winnipeg, not just lie down and let Winnipeg get 2 points from them.
And the Avalanche indicated on their schedule release that Winnipeg game is going to be a division rival game. So I guess they are bringing back the Colorado Rockies jerseys again for this year, because this was also the year for the reverse retros. So I know that was a point, like a rumor, that was this the last season for those alternates? Looks like we're getting them in 2022-23.
Yeah, and if you look at the Avalanche graphics, like they put the division rival in like a blue square. So I think we're going to get those Colorado navy blues again. But you're right, like you were hearing rumors of the reverse retros. I don't think they're going to announce that right now. I think it's going to be a separate announcement, you would think. And then we'll maybe know which games that. I just hope they do more. Because I think when they did those before, they only wore them for like 3 games.
Yeah.
And I know that was a shortened season because of COVID. So I hope they do them for a few more going into this next year. So,
yeah. If it was even up for question, why would they highlight it already? So it's just curious.
So, anybody in the comments, feel free. What do you think of the schedule? Is it just a schedule, and are you the type of person that's just like, yeah, we play the schedule that we're given, or do you have some hatred towards this for whatever reason? Do you not like that the Avalanche have to go on the road in the East Coast so early in the season? And like we were talking about, playing these season series in such a short amount of time, you like them spaced out a little bit more.
Starting out on a back-to-back.
Starting out back-to-back. Fire away in the comments. So, all right, let's hear from Rock Auto and then get to Andre Burakovsky's season grade. But with the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts that you need. So why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand that their warehouse happens to carry? When you have a computer with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket, save time and money when using Rock Auto. It's a family-run business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. The prices are reliably low for every customer. And you can go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, locked on in the How Did You Hear About Us section, so they know that we sent you to them. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. Andre Burakovsky is next in line for our season grade. We do these every off season and we do them alphabetically. So he's second on our list. We had Abe Coobel a couple days ago, and he's the first of the Bs. And oddly enough, that's the grade he got from people of Instagram and Twitter. Over on Instagram, they gave him a B. 63% of the vote was for B. And on Instagram, 58% was for a B. And to kind of go over Burakovsky's stats for the season: 22 goals, 39 assists for 61 points. He was a plus 12, only 18 penalty minutes. His average time on ice was 16 minutes and 16 seconds. He played 80 games. This regular season, obviously. 5 game-winning goals and a 14.8 shooting percentage. We kind of always talk about Burakovsky a lot because we feel like he's a streaky guy. And taking that into account, taking in the postseason into account, what do you give him for a grade?
You cannot spell Burakovsky without a B.
There you go.
Or he would be Burakovsky. So I'm giving him a B. And that's for
like a straight B or B minus or B plus.
I honestly, I want to give him a B minus.
Mm-hmm.
And it was talked about this year that Burakovsky was seeing like a therapist because he's very hard on himself. Like he believes in his shot. When he doesn't hit it, you can see how he just like kind of just throws his head back like he's frustrated that he didn't get that shot. So he sought about how to like deal with that. And I'm giving him a B minus because you could kind of see the effort. You could see his shots were, we joked
Are you
about it
giving him
all
a
the
B
time.
minus now? Are you giving him
Yes,
a B or B minus?
I'm giving him a B minus.
Okay. I thought you said you're giving him a B. Okay.
No, I'm giving him a B minus because of, you could see the effort. You could see he's trying. Like, he went out and got some help to deal with like missing the shots. Like, he's actively trying. It's a B minus. If you didn't see this effort and this was the same old, this would be a C minus. Like, and also to his credit, 80 games when injuries was such a problem for the Avalanche all year long. Even with the COVID breaks, like 80 games, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So for me, kind of how we do this is like when we have whoever we have that's up for the grade, I kind of just in my mind immediately just think of like, oh, I'll probably give this guy that without really looking at anything and going like kind of like deeper into the numbers. And for Burakovsky, my initial like instinct was to give him a C plus.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, and like I said before, like we kind of drag him a little bit too much for being inconsistent. But when I looked at it, like first of all, 61 points is nothing to sneeze at. You know,
No.
like that's a very good season, 61 points. And when I looked at his stats, and like we said, we always want him to break out of like a funk. And if he goes a few games, just score something. And when you go game by game, he honestly did that. Honestly. And I'm going through it. So he started the season, that first game against Chicago, with an assist. And then the next game, he against St. Louis, he had a goal. And then he went through 4 games with nothing. And this is what I've always said about him. When he goes 3 or 4 games, score something. Well, he went 4 games and he scored something. And then he went on a nice run. And then he had 1 game where he didn't score. And then he scored 2 goals and followed that up with 3 assists. And then he went 3 games with nothing and then scored a goal.
Yeah.
And then went 3 games with nothing and then scored 2 goals and followed that up with 3 goals. And then going deeper into the season, he had another good run of goals and assists, went 3 games with nothing, scored an assist. And this happened throughout the entirety of the season. And I'm kind of eating my words now because like when you just on the surface, you just feel like his ruts, I think are blown up more than other players because you just expect so much from him. And I eventually wanted to sit here when I first looked at the stats and saw 61 points. I'm like, man, if he didn't go through those stretches of not scoring, he could have had 75.
Yeah.
But he went through stretches of not scoring, which every player goes through. And I have to give him credit for going through those games and doing exactly what I would want him to do when you have a 3-game rut. Do score something, either a goal or assist, and he did that throughout the entirety of the season. So I have to give I had to bump him up to a B minus for that, and I would have bumped him up to a flat B, but I feel like the playoffs, because he did get benched in the playoffs, a healthy scratch, minus the Stanley Cup final. He got injured for that. But even when we had producer Drew on, I asked the question. I would have been more comfortable with Andre Burakovsky out there in those final games against Tampa because you know what he has the capability of doing. So I bumped him up to a B minus for my grade, and I think it's well deserved. It doesn't really change my attitude on do I think they should bring him back. I think for the right price, I wouldn't be against it, to be totally honest with you.
And when you go back and look at his deep stats, like those 3 games where he doesn't score, usually the game where he comes out and tallies either a goal or assist, it's on the 3rd or 4th game of him getting nothing where his minutes are diminished. As soon as you see his minutes get diminished, that next game, he comes right back out there because he feels the pressure.
Yeah.
And he goes out there and he knows what he could do. And that's what I was saying. Like, he's trying. He's putting in that effort.
Oh,
And when
sure.
he feels his role get diminished, he fights for it. So that's why he gets a B minus and not just a C because of what we perceive him to be, but what he's actually doing.
Where I got it here. So his here it is. So his goals above expected. Cale Makar was first on the team with 13 goals above expected. Gabe Landeskog was second with 8.2. Andre Burakovsky was third with 7.2.
Report that website. That stat that can't happen.
And then the one thing that we always kind of rag on him about is just missing the net all the time. And he was where'd it go? Let's see. Unblocked. Okay. Well, I'm not counting Martin Kaut. I'm not counting Sampo Ranta.
We should.
So Bowen Byram missed the net 32% of the time, but he only took 102 shot attempts, and there was a large portion of the season where he was injured. So he would be number one. Number two would be Sam Girard, who only took 188 shots, which is his percentage of missed shots that miss a net was 32% as well. But, he did have some injuries as well, and he's a defenseman. Third on the team is Jack Johnson with 149 shot attempts, and 31% of his shots missed the net. All three of those guys are defensemen. So remove them, and again, their shot attempts: Bowen Byram, Sam Girard, Jack Johnson, 102, 188, 149. Again, all defensemen. So the number one forward on the team that missed the net the most, Andre Burakovsky, with 313 shots. So three times more than Bowen Byram, 1.5 times more than Sam Girard, and 2 times more than Jack Johnson.
All three of those defensemen put together, basically.
Yeah, and Burakovsky missed the net just about the same amount of percentage. So that's where he takes a little ding for me. Like, he needs to get, because he has a lethal shot. He needs to get it on net more. And if he did that, if that number came down, let me see where guys, like, I'm going to be difficult on him here. Nathan McKinnon was 22%. So that's almost a 10-point difference in missing the net. If he could do that, if he could come down to 25%, his points would go up another 10, 12 points without
easily.
So, is that fixable? Yeah, it is. I think it's a little bit in his head, and I think it's a little bit like he wants to put that perfect shot on net, which is always, maybe like a bar down shot. So he's always missing high or missing wide. But I going through the numbers, I kind of changed my tune a little bit on Andre Burakovsky's season. I think he had a very solid season, and 61 points proves that. Is it enough to bring him back? I don't know. I don't know if his number is going to go up. I don't think the Avs keep him around. Yeah. If they can get him for about the same, maybe even a little bit less, I wouldn't be against bringing him back. So
and we get critical of him because those games that he takes the night off and disappears are usually games where we need him.
Yes.
Where you're not
right.
Like, if he stepped up here, got an assist or a goal, it probably would have changed it into a W. So
there's been moments where he was on the top line.
Mm-hmm.
So he has the capability. So yeah, I think we both give him a B-, and Twitter and Instagram give him a B, and Twitter and Instagram can't do pluses and minuses. So B's across the board for Andre Burakovsky.
B's in the trap.
There it is. Next up will be Bowen Byram. So gonna love to see where that one goes. There you go. So he'll be next up. I'll have that up by the afternoon. I'll put it up around noon or something like that. So all right, everyone, that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure you comment on the I know the YouTube people are going to be commenting on that schedule. So what they like, what they don't like, the games that they're going to, let's hear it all. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated, and tuning in and following us on our social media outlets. For Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan, I am Chris Maselli, and this is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. We'll see you guys tomorrow.